Ladies and gentlemen, Monsieur, Dames, thank you for the invitation to this event. I have to say, it was not my idea to start with an excavator talking about peatlands, but it is as it is, and I just go on to the next slide to get rid of this machine. So, in English now, 40 years ago, I made an inventory about the Austrian MIRES, and this was the basis, the databasis for what is going on now at the moment. And this project I'm talking about has the following objectives. So we wanted to improve the knowledge basis in view of biodiversity changes by remapping the vegetation of 200 Austrian MIRES. Biodiversity monitoring, in which the vegetation... so I should be bigger now, larger. But when I make a step back, you will have to come and pick me up again. So biodiversity monitoring, we compare the survey of the time between 84 and 1990 with today. And in 2012, there was a study brought out, the Climat. I have to say it in German because moor is not moor. Moor is heathland in English. And Climat is climate and mire combined. And I will talk about this study later on, but it's an estimate how things will be in the future. And we know future is insecure, but we have some methods that we can talk a little bit about it. And this is what we want to do. We want to make a basis to have a second round of this Climat study based on this new vegetation data that we gained in the last year. Of course, other objectives of this study is assessment of carbon sequestration and release of greenhouse gases and so on. But this is something I'm not talking about this time. It's the job of Stefan Glatzel to talk about things like that because it's his work. And finally, I will be again involved in restoration measures, at least in 3 MIRES after taking a prioritization. Of course, not from the peatlands that we are looking at or looked at, because one of the basic interest in this study was we were looking for peatlands that are almost not influenced by man, because we wanted to know what is the MIRES reaction to global change or other things, but not human influence so much. So as a basis, you see we started in 82 already to work out a survey on the Austrian MIRES. And in 92, 10 years later, we saw already some changes, but not in vegetation, but in MIRE number as such. So we lost in this time again something like 15% of the peatlands that we have mapped in the first round. And in the second catalogue that we published, there was also a description of the vegetation of these MIRES and the plant communities of alpine MIRES. So the result is we have a good map about the distribution of MIRES. What you can see is that it is not everywhere wet enough to have mires, but the typical places that you can see, maybe I can, yeah, here in the westernmost part, and here you have also a big amount of mires again here and up here. These are all mountain ranges looking to northwest, and so in this case we have these rising clouds that rain when they get higher, and we have high humidity there, up to 2,000 millimeters a year, where of course the conditions for peatland formation are ideal. In the south we have different conditions. This is the end moraine area of the Drau Glacier, and this is a part where we have mainly fens, so groundwater faded fens, different from those in the north where mainly bogs are existing from precipitation. Now back to this Climat study. This is a cumulative distribution of Maya ecosystem types. It's just, you can see that the big points are 7 to 8 of these ecosystem types together, and the distribution is as we saw on the map before. But this study now tries to predict what we will lose until the end of the century. And this is the loss. So you can see it's quite a bit. Between 2081 and 2090, this will be the picture. And this is what will remain. So at least what the model says, it will be like this. We will see what we found out as a basis for a new round of this modeling. So the vegetation survey between 1984 and 88 was carried out by a team. I made the railways, Harald Zechmeister, the Mosses, Karl Reiter, programmed the database, and he was our GIS chief. We mapped 1,550 sites, and you can see 45, 50 railways, so vegetation plots. We had selection criteria, of course, for this. We looked at peatlands that are at least in the bigger part still intact, because it was a Maya conservation catalogue and not a catalogue of peat appearances in Austria. There's much more peat that is not a Maya anymore, just agriculture on peat. And of course the conservation value was one of the most important arguments for us. In 2023, we looked at 200 sites. We had 1,241 samples. Completely new team. You see the names. I want to strike out Pamela Bauer, who is the chief for data compilation. So the diagrams that I will show you are mainly made by her and her colleague Johanna Hartmann. It's important to stress this, because without these people it would be impossible to make studies like this. You need people who can work with these modern methods much better than I can. So we had selection criteria. It's the important also the accessibility of the site. So when you have one summer to map 200 sites, it's necessary that you also have the possibility to go there quickly. You need permits of the landowners, but you also need the legal permits, and this means you need about a year in Austria to get the permits, the legal ones. the ones from the landowners you get quickly or not. And the number of railways per mile in 1990, but so not the ones where we have 60 railways from and not less than 2. So we have first results here. Yeah, it's possible to read it out. So we have the category of MIRES, bogs, we have transitional MIRES, and we have fens in the other direction. Yeah. Fens, Niedermoor, transitional Mire, Übergangsmoor, and bogs, Hochmoor. And what you can see here is the number of species. And it shows very well typical differences between these Mire types. The number of species is, I can say, in fens and transitional mires has not changed dramatically, but in the box we can really see a significant change in the number of species. And as the fens are very different, we have on the other side of this slide for different fen types the same, and what you can see is that we have in some of these fen types also a significant rise in species numbers where the arrows indicate this. To show you what we mean by this ecological or hydrogenetic Maya types, I will show you later, sorry. The railways in the first vegetation survey were taken for finding out plant communities. So this means it was a different task. Now we want to make monitoring as a basis for the future. So this is a different approach, but we managed it using methods that make it easy. And you can see here that there is a difference when you work on vegetation and plant communities, and when you work on vegetation and monitoring the conditions where this vegetation grows. So these species that are usually not interesting for plant communities because they are too sparse, they are important for the monitoring, especially for the questions that we have. So what we finally used was a method published by Grünig and others in 2005. You can always see on the bottom of the page the people who were involved in these studies and where it came from. And the basis is the usage of the Landolt indicator values. So we have a species list, and we have for every species one of these values from Landolt, and with the help of these indicator values, we work out now how the differences between the two rounds look like. It showed in the past that abundance is less important. It's the presence of the species that really are in use. So what we did, where we only used 3 steps now, rare, present, and dominant, and not these 7 steps Blanc-Blanquet scale anymore. And what we did finally is we calculated the means of species numbers, means of reaction, which is pH, moisture, nutrient level, and light values for Maya categories, hydrogenetic Maya types, plant communities, and Mayas in different geographical regions. I will now stick to the first values, so reaction, moisture, nutrient, and light. Here you have the diagrams for bogs, transitional Mayas, and fens with respect to pH, nutrients in the first line, and light and moisture and light in the second. So this is what we found out to be the difference between the two, the one from 1990 and the one from 2023. 1990 was the time when it was published. So the railways were made earlier, 35 to 40 years ago. What you can see here for bogs, there are not really dramatic changes in the different values. What is interesting is that with respect to pH, for instance, you have a broader scale, so more difference and a slight rise. The same counts for nutrients, but not the range is bigger. Whereas, and this is in all the cases so, the moisture and the light value, which means shade and so on, the influence of shade goes down slightly but visible. For transitional Mayas, you find the same values, a little bit stronger for the reaction, so pH. There's a rise that is significantly. And then for the fens, the pH almost didn't change. You have a rise in nutrients, which is quite a bit. And again, you have this lowering of moisture and light. So this is the overlook, and now we want to go a little bit more in detail with the fens because they are very different. So we start with, first of all, raised bogs, that you know what we mean by this, and transitional Mayas. The arrows show you where the water comes from. And these pictures show you how they look like in nature. We go now to the fen types, inundation Mayas and kettle hole Mayas. Both have an even groundwater table, so it's not sloping, so the water table is not moving very much. What you can see is here the reaction in inundation Mayas goes down a little bit. Nutrients again rise. Moisture again is less, and the same counts for light. Kettle hole Mayas, a little bit different. No, not a little bit, yeah, it's a little bit less than in inundation Mayas. So we have a slight lower reaction, and we have even nutrition, a little bit less moisture and light. The next are the pictures what inundation Mayas look like, and kettle hole Mayas, and how they look like in nature. Then we have terrestrialization Mayas and palutification Mayas, and again you can see easily, and I have not much time, so I will not go too much in details, but for the palutification Mayas, for instance, we have quite a significant rise in reaction. terrestrialization mires, so floating mats and things like that, palutification, rising groundwater, and this is how they look like in nature. And last but not least, we have also fans that are sloping and where you have moving water, percolation, so the water goes through the peat body, and surface flow, as the name says. What you can see here is, again, a picture that is not very much different from those before. We have the rise here for percolation mires in nutrients. Again and again, nutrients are higher. Acidity is almost the same, and we have less moisture and less light indicators, and you have the same about in the surface flow mires. So the moving water, groundwater, is here in the foreground. So this is the scheme of these two, and this is how they look like in future, in reality. So the first results is exactly what I told you before. pH slightly increasing in box and transition mire, slightly decreasing in fens. Nutrient value is increasing, moisture value and light value are decreasing, and for all mires in Austria together, you have exactly the same trends. So this is the picture of 198 mires between these 35 to 40 years. And what's important from my point of view, that the interpretation of this result can show us if it is true. We have to look if it is possible to repeat this, as if there is an overlap of two main triggers for the trends: climate change and increasing amount of NOx in the atmosphere since the 50s. This is something we know always, also from the forestry people. And climate change affects moisture and acidity and nitrogen, the growth and appearance of species with a higher demand for nutrients. And these plants grow higher and denser and then affect light and nutrient values. And this was what I wanted to tell you.
Thank you very much. And good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Well, in comparison with my previous speakers, my presentation will be more practical, because I would like to demonstrate you some restoration projects which are implemented in MIRES in the Sumava region. But before I will speak about restoration methods and techniques, I would like to introduce the area of the Sumava mountains. Now I need to go back. Yes. The Sumava mountains represent important wetland and mire region in Central Europe. It is situated along the border with Germany and Austria, and 1/3 of this area is covered by wetlands of various types, and 10% is covered by mires. The most abundant are especially minerotrophic mires, which are represented by spruce mires, box spruce forest, and various diverse treeless fens. And the ombrotrophic bogs are not so frequent and are represented by high-rise bogs developed on the upland area, and especially bog pine forest in lowland, in the valleys in lower altitudes. Yeah, on this map you can see the distribution of MIRES within the Sumava National Park. The blue color was marked mineralophytic MIRES, and red color shows the bogs. Although the peatlands belong to the best preserved habitats in the area and they represent the highest natural values, they have been impacted by various human impacts in the past, especially by drainage and also by peat extraction and eutrophication. And during the survey, which was made in 90s, we found that more than 70% of MIRES have been drained, especially by surface drainage, and more than half of other types of wetlands have been also drained, and majority of springs as well. The extent of degradation changes we registered, and which were very alarming, it was the main impulse why we start such a comprehensive restoration project already in 90s in the whole region, and now we are in the third phase of this program, which is represented by large transboundary life project. In the beginning of this restoration program, we were focused especially on selected habitats, especially on valuable MIRES and species, and on biodiversity, but this goal was quite soon shift more to the comprehensive or complex hydrological restoration in the whole landscape. And yeah, now we are in the third phase, represented by LIFE project, which is named as acronym LIFE for MIRES. This project is transboundary. The main goal of this project is restoration of more than 2,000 of wetlands and MIRES in the region, and to reach this goal, 4 important institutions in the region joined to reach it, and this project started in 2018 and will be finished this year. And this project is the first project which solves problems with water transboundary, not only separately on each side of the border. But and this project does not involve only direct restoration measures in the field, but also monitoring. We monitor the key or important variables like water table, also soil moisture, water chemistry. We collect water samples each month in final profiles from restored catchments. And together with our partners from South Bohemian University, they monitor the soil processes and soil structures, soil properties, and also cooling effect of restored wetlands within the scale of the whole landscape. And my colleague will speak about that later. And yeah. And now, regarding the restoration methods, it was already stressed that it is impossible to restore only separated habitats. We are working in the mountain area, in headwater area, and this region has its specific features and conditions which are important for restoration approach. And especially in the headwater area, we are restoring wetlands on sloping gradients with a high risk of erosion, and the whole area is rich in springs, which has its specific approach to and specific restoration methods, because the most abundant are spring type of halocrans, spring in the area, but the advantage is that we are working in the oligotrophic environment, which is the best for restoration works, and also we are working in the area with high natural values, which sometimes represent the limits for implementing of restoration measures, and yeah. Within the sites which we are restoring, we usually restore not only MIRES or some separated habitats, but we restore them together with other water structures in the whole microcatchment, in the whole hydrological units, because all these hydrological features like springs, wetlands, MIRES, and small capillary streams, mountain streams, are developed in a diverse mosaic and are interlinked among each other, so they are restored within the one project. This such called microcatchment approach. Within this approach, we usually close the drainage ditches and to increase water table and to return water, to keep water in the soil profile. We restore springs, and also we are returning the stream water back to the stream flow. And as we are working in the just headwater area in just vicinity of springs, where the streams are usually immediately redirected into the drainage system. It is sometimes quite difficult to distinguish between the typical ditch, which are collecting or concentrating water from soil profile, and ditches which are leading the small capillary streams, and it is very important to respect it and to incorporate it into restoration program, because the drainage ditches are simply blocked, and ditches which are leading the stream water has to be the streams has to be first returned to the stream courses, and then the ditches could be removed. Ditches are blocked usually by cascade of dams, usually woody dams, and then infilled by soil material. Both steps have to be done together, not to be solved separately, because if we only would block only the ditches only by dams, there is high risk of vertical erosion near the bottom, and simple blocking of ditches doesn't work. It has to be accompanied by soil infilling of channels by soil or peat or another natural material. What is important that we are not rewetting the wetlands or MIRES chaotically. We try to return water to its natural level, to the level which corresponds with the situation in undisturbed habitats of comparable type. And this target water table, we call this level, we call target water table, and it determines the distribution of dams along the channel and the distance between dams. And it is clear that target water table is different for distinct types of MIRES and other wetlands. And here you can see some values of target water table for separate habitats. The small capillary streams we are restoring using four main approaches. Where the ancient former stream bed is preserved, we simply release the water into the preserved stream bed. On some sites we could to release water free and only to initiate the stream course developing, and some streams we have to construct the stream bed. And the most difficult is to rewave and to restore the highly eroded streams, highly eroded drainage ditches directly in the line of former stream. Here you can see the example of one site which is represented by large spruce mires which have been crossed by iron curtain in the past. This iron curtain was accompanied by drainage channels and some water from springs on the slopes have been redirected into the ditches, and on the left side, on the right side, you can see the result where the huge gorge, more than 2 meters in depth, was developed. So we blocked this drainage ditches by bore dams installed horizontally in 2 layers with geotextile between, and we infilled it by peat, and we also crossed the water, the streams into their original stream beds, which have been which were found in the forest. Yeah, it was working very well. Here you can see a result from the upper part of the site with expanding sphagnum carpet and recolonization of some species which are related to initial vegetation stages. This is another example. Yeah, here you can see how important it is to restore mires together with accompanied wetlands and in the whole hydrological unit. On this map you can see the 3 main peat domes with the spruce mires between. In such a triangle there are several springs generating the streams which have been redirected into the drainage ditches and highly eroding the bog domes. So all channels were blocked also, and some channels were blocked with help of volunteers. Here is another example of restored spruce mire or bog forest, and on the graph you can see the response of water table, which was very quick, and the fluctuation was reduced and the water table was increased. Somewhere we are working together with beavers, but I think I don't have enough time to explain how we solve this situation, because it is not quite easy, because beavers are functioning somewhere only temporary because of not appropriate trees and fed for them. And here is the hydrological response of the spring, of the water table in springs, in forest springs, in another catchment. Yeah. Okay, thank you for your attention.
Perfect.
Bonjour, thank you for invitation. Please don't misinterpret. Until now we never used the caterpillar for restoration of the mountains mire in Poland. Not because we have something against caterpillars and using them in restoration, but because the natural condition in Polish mountains are rather not suitable for caterpillars. All the restoration works which I will show you must be, in fact, done by hands. As you see on the map of the Poland, you can notice that we have mountains on the south and mires on the north. And there are almost no overlapping. And the question, similar as for the whole Europe, is does it mean that mountains are missing in Polish mountains? And the answer is also the same, no. We have some, Some of them are very impressive. Some of them are very beautiful. Some of them are very interesting from the ecological and hydrological point of view. Some of them are preserved better than the average of Maya conservation status of the Polish lowlands. But of course, some of them, or most of them, also need restoration activities. From in the southwestern part of Poland, we have the mountains range Izery Mountains, and this is the location of the very interesting complex of various Myers. We have, in fact, full variety of mountains Myers there, from the raised bogs in the streams valleys in the depression, throughout the slope poor fence on the slopes, to the bog spruce forest with the sphagnum dominated forest floor and with the layer of the peat. All that Myers are degraded by the draining, but mainly by the forest management and building the forest roads, in particular by the forest roads which cross the slope Myers, disturbing the percolating of water along the slope. But some restoration projects are already implemented there by the State Forest District and by some NGOs. This is the specific Polish situation. We have very strong State Forest Agency, which sometimes is very supportive in nature conservation projects. In general, Polish foresters are very good in conservation of all ecosystems which are not forests. Similarly here, they are very helpful with implementing the blocking of the water outflow from the Myers which are formally designated as the non-forest area. But still we have the problem with the continuing of forest management which still destroy the spruce forest with the on the peat. Going to the east, we have very famous Myers and bogs on the plateau of Karkonosze, but also not so famous, but also interesting, the slope Myers in the forest range of Karkonosze Mountains. They are rather well preserved. Only the point restoration intervention are necessary there. The main activity, which is implemented by the Karkonosze National Park, is in fact channelizing of the tourism and building the wooden path, enabling the hiking not destructive for the pit. We have also the Trzcińskie Mokradła, which are presented on the poster, but in the Middle Sudety range, we have also the variety of Myers from the raised bogs in the Stołowe Mountains and in the Orlickie Mountains, mainly forested, mainly covered by the pinus or spruce bog forests, also drained by ditches in the past, and also presently under the restoration project implemented by the Regional Conservation Authority or implemented by the foresters, focused mainly on the blocking of the draining ditches. But in this range, we have also a lot of very small dispersed Myers in the all mountains range, which also represents the huge variety from the poor fence to the rich fence, which are fed by water by the underground water, and which are degraded mainly by the erosion, which are initiated, for example, by the transporting of the cut trees. After such disturbance on the surface of the mire, the linear water flow appears, and the erosion make next steps. Sometimes the very small intervention can stop this degradation process and can follow to restoration of that mires. Also here, some conservation projects are implemented by the Polish NGOs with the collaboration with the forest district. We have also the Tatra Mountains, which are the highest mountains in Poland, and small but interesting mires in Tatras around the dystrophic lakes. The Tatra mires are rather well preserved. They are not degraded. They don't need the specific restoration intervention, but they are under the protection of national park, and they are rather strictly protected there. The Tatra mires, the Karkonosze mires, and the part of the mires in the Izera Mountains are designated as the Ramsar site in Poland. Near the Tatras, we have the biggest bog complex, which is the complex of several raised bogs developed in the depression between mountain ranges, between Tatras and Carpathians range, in the so-called Orava-Nowy Targ basin. There are the huge raised bogs, among the biggest raised bogs in Poland. And the landscape, as you see, it is the contrast of the landscape of the raised bogs, partially forested, partially still open, with the high mountains in the perspective. The problem there is the long time tradition of the pit digging by the local people. As a result of this, significant part of the raised bogs are already cut out. But the problem here is also a draining ditches and draining of the raised bogs. Also here some conservation actions are already implemented, but only for several bogs in that complex. Some of them concerns the nature reserves Burna Czerwonym, are implemented by the local forest district and nature conservation authority. On the other bogs with the same complex, the restoration activities are presently implemented by the regional conservation activity and NGO Naturalist Club, for which I'm working as a part of LIFE project, so-called LIFE Multipit, which is presently ongoing. We are going to block all the ditches draining of the bog. LIFE Multipit is the first project in the mountains area in Poland, which is justified by climate. But of course, the set of conservation measures, it is the same as for project justified by the biodiversity, by the hydrology, and by the ecosystem conservation status. Next, in all Carpathian mountains and all Sudety mountains, we have a lot of dispersed, very, very small, but very, very interesting, also very, very important for floristic diversity, alkaline fens, which are called in Polish mułaki, which means swamps. They are very small mires, fed by the water from the underground. As a result, the water is nutrient rich. Thus, the rich vegetation is developing, rich by interesting with the set of very specific species. Also, such alkaline fens need some restoration measures because they are in many cases degraded by the erosion or by the ditches which are digged by the local people. Also here, the stopping the too intensive water outflow and stopping the linear water outflow is the conservation target. Such conservation project was also implemented, targeting about 100 of mountains alkaline fens in Carpathians under by the Naturalist Club Poland. It is implemented as the LIFE project alkaline fens finalized several years ago. And on the eastern edge of the Poland, near the Ukrainian border, we have also the very interesting complex of raised bog in the Sun Valley, protected in the Bieszczady National Park, and also degraded by the draining, not only draining by the bogs, but also draining the area in the neighborhood, And also here, the Bieszczady National Park implement the restoration project, blocking the water outflow and blocking the draining. As usually, as in each conservation project of the peatlands, the main conservation measure is, of course, water management, and in fact, stopping the water outflow. As usually, we implement it after the analysis of the hydrology, after the analyzing of the terrain, the surface of the mire, after the detailed planning where the water outflow should be blocked. As usually, it should always be cascade, not only the blocking in single points, but blocking is in many points. As usually, the target is create the water table near to the surface of the mire and similar to the natural one. But also, as usually in practice of the conservation project, there are also significant dilemma because each ditches blocking costs money and the funds are usually limited. Then the dilemma is how many blocking points is really necessary for achieving the effect of restoration, and how to use the available money for restoration more effectively. And of course, the answers are various. We consider the various kinds of ditches blocking. The most typical is the wooden dams blocking the ditches. This is the very, very common solution in all bog restoration projects throughout all the Europe. And of course, if you have seen the hundreds of presentations of MIRES restoration project, you have seen also the hundreds of examples of the wooden dams across the ditches. Also in Poland, there is nothing new. We commonly use this method, and in fact, in each of the presented area, such technology of ditches blocking were used. Sometimes they are a bit modified. Sometimes they are as simple as possible. Sometimes you use the mixed construction of the wooden pit dams, which in fact are also very effective. The wooden structure is in fact resistant for the high water flow. The pit between wooden walls make the dam more stable. Then this is the solution which is in fact commonly used and assessed as effective in many, many cases. But what is interesting, in some very, very small restoration project, we can look also for the low technology methods. Here is one of them. Here is the beaver dam analog created by the wood of the willow, which can grow. It is not effective in the first year after the implementation, but after the transport of the natural materials, it became effective in the next year, and sometimes it works in the practice. Sometimes the beaver themselves are our aliens. Here is the complex of natural beaver dams created by the beavers only, not created by the restoration project, on the edge of the Baligówka raised bogs in the Orawa Nowy Targ bog complex. It is not true that it is only temporary. This complex of beaver dams now is about 20 years old, and there are no indicators that the beavers are not going to continue their presence there. It is one of the most impressive beaver dam complex which I ever seen in Poland, located in the mountains region, which is not very typical for that species. And this beaver dams complex block the flow of the natural stream, block the flow of the stream which bed was transformed, which looks similar to ditch, but in fact the stream is natural. but even there, the significance of that situation is that such rising water level in the valley on the edge of the raised box support the water level in the raised box itself, and is very helpful for restoration of the bog vegetation on the cupola of Baligówka bog in closely neighborhood of this place. Sometimes, for example, for slow ridge fence in the Sudety, very simple solution as the using of the wooden logs from the forest in neighborhoods for blocking very small water linear flows are also effective because they change the character of the water flow for linear to the percolating throughout the pit, and it is what we want to achieve in such kind of mires. Sometimes we also try the very natural methods as the introducing clumps of carex in the ditches. It is effective only in very small ditches, which are not in which the huge flows not appears even after the strong rains. But as you see, we can still achieve several centimeters of rising of water level up in such ditches. It is also the example, but not from restoration project. It is example of the folk solution for blocking the ditches. Of course, there is no situation that the local people try to block the ditches on the peatlands from their own initiative. This is the situation from the Orava Nowy Targ basin, where the local people digging the pit was enforced by the decision of the local conservation authority to block the water outflow and do it that way, using even the garbage and using the wooden elements without, in practice, no cost. Is it effective? Yes, but until first heavy rain. Sometimes the ditches blocking is not the solely conservation measures. In several situations, we identify that we need to improve the water balance by the reducing evapotranspiration, and we are going to restore the original bog vegetation instead of bog forests. And on several bogs, also the trees removing was implemented. But generally, effect of this sometimes are good. In fact, in the first years after the removing are not good because the bog looks terrible. But after the several years, in many cases, bog vegetation can regenerate and can be better than before that action. But we face the significant problem in each situation of trees removing, because it is always easy to cut trees. It is difficult to take them away from the bog, not disturbing the bog surface so much. It is the general information about the restoration in Poland till now. Thank you very much.
Geneviève Magnon et Pajou Doutlou du programme Live Tourbières. J'avais une question pour Ivana et Pawel. On a parlé ce matin de la spécificité des tourbières de montagne avec la question de la pente qui est plus importante qu'en tourbière de plaine. On est sur des petits objets et j'avais une question sur les coûts de ces travaux, puisqu'on se rend compte que sur le Jura, avec nos deux programmes live, on est sur des coûts qui peuvent atteindre 25 000 à 50 000 euros pour restaurer 1 hectare, remouiller 1 hectare pour atteindre nos objectifs en termes de niveau de nappe. Je voulais savoir s'ils avaient des notions de coûts à nous transmettre, alors en high-tech ou en low-tech, sur les projets qu'ils ont menés aussi bien en Tchéquie qu'en Pologne. Si vous avez quelques exemples en tête de coûts, ce serait intéressant quand même.
The cost of your works, high-tech and low-tech.
Generally, it is very, very difficult to assess the average cost because the average for the mountains miles means nothing. The problem of slopes, of course, there is. And the problem is that in the slopey terrain, all is much more difficult because we must not only stop the draining by the draining ditch, but also we face the problem of erosion. And on the slopes, usually the low-tech solutions are not so suitable, which means they are sometimes suitable even if the slope is slopey, but if the linear water flow is not high. Using the low-tech solution, we can stop the very, very small linear outflow. And if we use the low-tech solution as the, for example, logs from the forest in neighborhoods, which are located across the linear water outflow, the cost is minimum. In fact, it is the cost of human work. It may be 100 euro for 1 point, but of course we need to implement it in many points. If we are going to block the higher flows, usually the wooden dams are necessary, and of course we need to implement the cascade, and of course the cascade must be much more dense on the slopes. But it is the relation is not linear because it is not possible to estimate the cost of single dam because the costs of building dam is in fact only the part of the cost is the cost of dams. Important part of the cost for the contracted person who do it is the cost of preparing of the work and access to the site. Then I am not going here to give the numbers. I must check, in fact, what money we spent for several projects. But what I need to accent, there is no simple correlation between area and the cost of restoration.
Thank you. I totally agree because the total costs can be influenced also by accessibility of the area, by risk of erosion and other factors. And a better expression of costs is, for example, to use unit, the amount of euros per 100 meters of the channel, for example. If we use the high technology, using the cascade of woody dams and infilling, and assessment of costs per 100 meters of the channel, of the average channel, not deep gorge, for example, could be from 80 euros up to 200, 300 euros by 100 meter of the channel.
Although I didn't speak about peatland rehabilitation, this was my job in the last 20 years. So I can give you numbers from Austria. One maybe for a typical valley bottom bog in the Lungau in Salzburg. Size 60 hectares, number of dams that have to be built in 196, costs 120,000 euros. Another example is a very steep mountain sloping acid fan with more than 280 dams, the size 12 hectares, and the accessibility of course not the same as in the valley bottom. So the costs were 3 times as much for this. So this, I think, show you exactly where the problems are. The accessibility, for instance, is one of the crucial points when you go to mountain bogs, because when you need so many dams, you cannot do it by hand. How will you do it to make 280 dams in a bog somewhere where you need about a dam width of 6 meters, for instance? Yeah? So you have to work with an excavator. You have to carry the timber up to the sides with a tumbler and so on. Or you use helicopters. Some of the people try to use helicopters. I prefer the other way. It's a little bit less cost intensive. And for instance, for these 2 projects that I was mentioned, we had always a group of 10 persons who worked in the field. And this is the costs, including also the preparation, I have to say. So it's not only the field work, it was also the preparation, where to put the dams. So this was done by me and a colleague together. And we have to level the site, of course, to have at least this 20 meters difference between the dams and not more, because otherwise it makes no sense to work. When you have more than 20 centimeters, the water table will not be high enough.
You were included the salaries of people?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I make a simple calculation in my mind, and the cost of blocking ditch in 1 point in Polish restoration project was from 100 euro for low-tech solution, of course, including also the salaries of the people, to the 2,500, 3,000 or 4,000 euro per point. But of course, number of points depends, among others, on the steeping of the slope. Sometimes 2 points per 100 meters of ditch are enough. Sometimes we need to implement 20 dams on that section of the ditch. Therefore, it is not possible to calculate it for area.
D'autres questions dans la salle? Oui, tout au fond. N'oubliez pas de vous présenter.
Alexandre Poirot, bureau d'études Inselberg. C'est une question à Monsieur Steiner. Quels sont les arguments qui permettent de privilégier la thèse des NOx pour expliquer l'augmentation des nutriments par rapport, par exemple, à la remobilisation du phosphore?
The story is that we learned from the forestry people that the NOx is a critical number in this game, and that they could see in the last 50 years, so since the 1950s, a permanent rise in NOx affecting the tree growth positively. So they have larger rings per year and less density of the timber. So from this observation onwards, we looked at aerial photographs that we have from Austria since the 50s, in the part where the English soldiers have been after the World War. And they started in 53 to give us the first aerial photographs. And when we look at those and compare it with the situation today, we can see a permanent, every 10 years, we have a set of photographs and we can see a permanent growth of the mountain pines in this box, in these regions. So this was an effect that we could observe already before we had acid rain, before we had lead, before we had climate change at all. Of course, the climate change was already going on at this time, but we didn't take much care about it. But still, this inversion of growth is an important factor because the result is that the mountain pines give more shade, and the shade is bad for the sphagnum. The sphagnum needs more light, and so sphagnum exchanges to Pleuroseum and other forestry mosses that have a completely different ecological functions. And there we run into problems on bogs that are not drained at all. It's just the effect of the growth of the mountain pines. And also we could see when we remove them, which is not easy in the European Union because mountain pines are highly protective. So we need long discussions and allowances for that. When we remove them, that in a short time, so in 5 years, you have a completely new sphagnum surface. So for us, when the sphagnum is able to grow under the present conditions of climate, it cannot be the negative influence of the climate change, must be another one. And so my result is that the nitrogen is important, and I can tell you also the phosphorus plays much more role in calcareous fans, and there of course we see also that phosphorus is an important part of the snow fertilizer, as we call it, that comes every winter to the places, so that the phosphorus concentrations are comparably high. They don't play the same role in acid fans, but in calcareous ones, phosphorus is also a fertilizer. Both, I think, is not really an effect of climate change, but it's an effect of overall change by man to the atmosphere. So it's an atmospheric influence, but if it is really due to the temperature change, I don't think so.
Oui. D'autres questions?
Oui, bonjour, Flore Lafay de Michaud du secrétariat de la Convention Ramsar. I'm Flore Lafay de Michaud from the Secretariat of the Convention on Wetlands. I would be pleased to hear the three of you maybe talking about how would you see prioritization of sites for restoration according to your past experiences. You have all experienced sites restorations, so in the future, how would you prioritize them? We heard of accessibility issues. Would you then go to the easier one to access, for example, or how would you prioritize your action? Thank you.
Yeah, it's an important question when you spend money that is not your own money, but tax money, and especially European Union money, because the controls there, as we know, are very strong. Yes, we have to think about what we spend money for. And an important thing is, how shall I say it? When I have to talk about myself, because in most of the cases I'm one of the persons who choose the places where we go to. I'm always looking, is there in the neighborhood or on the side is still remain of original bog vegetation or fen vegetation, so that the plants are there in the neighborhood and they can distribute when the conditions are good again. This is the one. The accessibility is enormously important because the costs change very quickly when you have a steep environment and there are wetlands, so the soil very often is slippery. It's not so easy really to work in places like that, even with caterpillars. But it works when it is well prepared. And another aspect is that you have a certain amount of money and you need to calculate how many dams can you really build for the money that you have, so that you maximize finally the output with respect to the possibilities that you have. It's not always easy to decide because in many cases I would really like to do this job in one of the other peatland because it would be so successful, but, and this is the next point, the landowner does not want. So you can have the best prioritization from the points that I told you in advance. But the first step in many cases is you have to send out a team of sociologists that really it's not a joke, yeah, that can convince the people, the local people and the landowners, how important and good it is to make this project. And when you once have these people on board, then you can start doing it. But of course, it's not always successful. Stefan Glatzel showed us examples where for the farmers it's necessary to make it rain, yeah? And even nature conservationists agree with this to protect his herd of cattle, and these are the circumstances. So it's a long-lasting process before you can really go and work. And not to talk about the permissions that you need officially from our county administrations. Just to walk on the site when it is protected, we need about 3/4 of a year before we get the permission to do so. I don't know why, but anyway, so in Austria, when you want to do something good for nature, you have really to go on your knees and beg that you are allowed to do it. This is the reality.
So we didn't have a session that was especially dedicated to the sociology of MIRES and how to protect it, including the opinion of people, but we could have it. Maybe it's a topic we can also have keep for our round table at the end. Maybe. Do you have something else to say about that?
Yeah. We also have set of criteria which we are using to evaluate and to set priorities for restoration work. And many of criteria was already mentioned by Michael, but I can also add some others, like is accessibility of the area and also the some strategies of involvement of protected area into Indian Reserve, which was already mentioned, into non-intervention zone. So for us, it's also important to restore some sites which will be designated as non-intervention area. And for us, it's also important to balance between intensity of previous disturbances and still preserving nature values in each site, and evaluation of potential and chance for good restoration. Yeah, it could be.
In my opinion, the answer on the question about prioritization, in fact, there are two answers: the theoretical one and the practical one. The theoretical was discussed already. Of course, we can develop criteria using some features of the sites, calculate criteria, create the ranking, create the strategy. Of course, it is the comprehensive and good approach. My personal opinion is that for me the highest priority is a situation when the site is change in the site is still reversible, but just before became irreversible. But it is the theoretical part. The practical part, I'm a restorator, and in fact, prioritization means the selection for what site I will apply for money for restoration project. In fact, there are two important criteria. The first criterion is implementability, which means it is rather easy to recognize what should I do, and the implementability which in sense of friendly stakeholders. I need the chance to implement the actions for which I apply for money. The technical implementability doesn't matter. I can select the site for which, for example, access is difficult, calculate high amount of money is needed for implementing that action and implement it if I have the support of the stakeholders, landowners, if I have no general opposition which can block implementation of the project. The second criteria is the possibility to justify my application for money. But in fact, that criterion is not so important because I'm the experienced applicant, and in most of situation I can build the justification which was effective for assessor of my application.
Thank you for all these explanations. A-t-on encore une autre question dans la salle? On pourrait prendre une dernière question. Oui, Dieu.
Oui, bonjour. Stéphanie Lamberti de la région Bourgogne-Franche-Comté. Dans le cadre de ces restaurations, y a-t-il une réflexion à l'échelle du bassin versant? J'imagine que oui. Et si oui, les actions réglementaires qui sont mises en place, est-ce qu'il y arrive qu'il y ait des actions réglementaires qui soient mises en place pour préserver ce qui a été fait? Et également, j'imagine qu'il y a également un suivi pendant plusieurs années pour voir un petit peu l'efficacité de ce qui a été fait.
Thank you very much for this question, because the question of catchment, I really forgot to mention it. When you want to rehabilitate a fen, then especially fen, then you need the whole influence of the groundwater of the whole catchment. So very often the fen looks still quite intact and good, but when you have in the surrounding area, not on the fen itself, drainage measures, a lot of drainage measures, or if the fertilization is rising there very quickly due to a change in agriculture, then the chance might be very low to have a good result for that. So the integrity of the catchments is extremely important, and it becomes more and more important as when you look at the catchment. In most of the cases, there is not only one place affected by a change in the catchment quality, but in most of the cases there are fens, there are streams, and there are rivers affected by it altogether. So it's one of the reasons, I think, why from the EU point of view they started more to look at catchments rather than to look at streams or rivers just alone as an insular problem. So it's an overall one. And I think in the future it becomes more and more important to look exactly at this, because we always look at carbon sinks, but fans, for instance, are not only carbon sinks. There are sinks for all kinds of nutrients and other poisons even that clear our water, and in many cases it will be in the future important to look at what water quality we have for our drinking water resources.
I think that the catchment or micro-catchment approach could be the basic approach to restoration works. And yeah, well,
generally, it's a very good question and very important problem, but also rather difficult implementation. Then I'm fully aware that we must switch off to the thinking in the scale of catchment, but till now I have no good examples of the implementation in Poland, in Polish mountains, measures targeting the catchment. We start from the restoration of raised bog, which are ambrotrophic and have no catchment. And it is of course because of high implementability of this project, because we have not so much stakeholders which can block the project implementation. There are also implemented some project of restoration of, for example, alkaline fans, but also there, the catchments of the project sites are usually the forested catchment without so significant problem of water management. But we still don't start seriously work with the restoration of such mires in Polish mountains, which problems are from the complicated catchment managed by many stakeholders with various interests, and it is probably the most difficult part of restoration effort which we must face in the future.
May I add something? Yeah, thank you. For example, in our region, we started to intensively negotiate with foresters to persuade them and to inspire them for restoration the micro-catchments in forest land they are managing. And this collaboration is quite well developing, and they started to restore, not to create water pools with visible water as water retention measure, but to restore whole microcatchment, including restoration of springs, small streams and wetlands, including mires. It is very important, and especially state forest institutions which have which manage state-owned land have great potential for large-scale restoration in the landscape.
Just an addition, because it was said that bogs have not a catchment. This is not true. When you look at the example from Stefan Glatzl about the soup bowl, of course, there is in the surrounding area groundwater, and it mixes in the so-called lag at the end of the raised bogs. When you lower the water table of this surrounding area, the basis of the groundwater of the bog, so the water body of the bog, which is independent from the groundwater, but only what the water quality means, not what the height of the groundwater means. When the groundwater is lowered, then the mire water body doesn't stay in the air without anything, it's also lowered. And very often the loss in peat due to a marginal drain is much higher than the loss of peat when you drain the surface of a mire. So you have to be careful, especially with respect to this catchment view. You have to look if the catchment is intact also to maintain the bog water table itself. So this is something you learn when you do it for a certain time and then find out that you thought completely wrong in the past. So learning by doing is something important, yeah.
Yes, interesting notice. So I thank you all for these exchanges, so of sharing your experience in your respective countries. We'll now have a break. Nous allons avoir une pause d'une demi-heure jusqu'à 16 heures. Veuillez donc, vous pouvez vous diriger dans la salle, il y a des boissons qui seront mises à votre disposition et nous nous retrouvons à 16 heures à ce même endroit pour parler des effets de la réhabilitation des sites. Thank you.